Hello everyone, I'm Ivan, and I'm going to tell you my favorite movie, Smoke Signals, directed by Chris Eyre, and made in 1998, a comedy drama with a PG-13 rating, as well as a 90% Rotten Tomatoes as of recording this. And with most people that seen Smoke Signals, you'll know the famous line,
Hey, Victor. Hey, Victor. Hey, Victor. Hey, Victor.
Even though I say this, I doubt you have seen this movie. So in this video, I'll give you a good summary and my thoughts on it. But I do advise that you watch it. Really is that good of a movie, as well as I'm not going to follow everything dot to dot. In the movie, the plot is about how Victor's mom, Arlie, played by Tantoo Cardinal, is told by Susie Song, played by Irene Bedard, on the phone that her husband, Victor's father, Arnold, played by Gary Farmer, has died in Arizona. So Victor Joseph, played by Adam Beach, along with geeky Native American Thomas, played by Evan Adams. They get on a bus and travel to Arizona to get their father's remains. Now that I say this, that's the brief about it. But there's so much more when it comes to talking about this that truly make this one of the best movies. Anyway, now that is out of the way, let's get into it. Narrator Thomas, who tells us that when he was a child, when his family were doing a house party, at 3 in the morning, his house was on fire. And since he was a kid at the time, he didn't remember that fire. So he was told all these stories and these events. And out of all those stories, he could fly. Symbolizing how, when he was a baby, he was thrown from the second story since the first story was on fire. And Arnold caught Thomas, while Thomas's parents, they burned in that fire. And how Victor was a baby too at the time. Thomas would be raised by his grandma. This shows us how easy someone can be taken away from us. For people, you can know them for your entire life and gone in the blink of an eye. It's now present day when this movie was made. So in 1989. Where the characters live on the res. We see Victor playing basketball while Thomas watches. There we see a flashback where we hear about how good Arnold was good at making disappear. Where just a swing of a hand, he can make anything disappear, including himself. Victor's mom, after a normal day, she gets a phone call about Victor, told by Susie Songs that Arnold was dead. She gave Victor some money so he can go travel to Arizona, and as he is cashing the check, he runs into Thomas. Notices that Victor wouldn't have enough to get to Arizona, so he offers to help, and all Thomas wants in return is to go with Victor, and goes back home. When he exits out, it flashes back to when he was a kid, and there we get a scene on how he and his dad would, and how they react. At first, you think he's just a normal and good dad. But once they reach home, young Victor accidentally drops the beer bottle, and Arnold smacks him, saying, "Toughen up." And this shows us that he drinks and he was abusive. When young Victor enters the house, it enters back into present day. Victor thinks to himself and eventually says yes. I love these transitions. So fluent, yet pretty great. It's not like one-time transitions where it's confusing and all, but it feels a bit natural, and I like it. As well as this really shows what Victor's father was like during his life, during Victor's life, and how back then Victor pretty cared about his father, but now that Victor's older, he understands. So he doesn't like him as much as he did in the past. When heading to the bus stop, and they get a ride from some people that know Victor and Thomas. But, as usual, they're native folks. They bargain. So Thomas tells a story about Victor's dad and all this long bits. But this shows us how much Thomas loves telling stories and how Victor can get annoyed with this. When they make it to the bus station. As for this bus ride, it really gets to know our characters' motivations, their dreams, and all that sort of stuff. And you get to really feel for the characters much more. Heading to Arizona, we flash back to Thomas and Victor when they're going on the trip. I'll go back to Thomas a little bit later. For Victor, we see how he was a bit of a troublemaker. And one day, when Victor sees his parents asleep, he heads outside and he starts breaking beer bottles one by one. And Victor's mom sees what's happening, and she finally tries to take a stand. She yells at Victor's dad, telling him to stop drinking. And Victor's dad, he argues. And soon this arguing becomes to a fight, and Arnold smacks her. And as this is happening, young Victor is sitting in a chair and watches what happens. Not too long, Victor's mom throws Arnold out and tells him never come back. And for young Victor, he never wanted this to happen. He never wanted to get rid of his dad. He simply wanted him to stop drinking. And so that's showing, as well as he's leaving, as the truck goes on, Victor jumps into the truck, hoping that he can convince him to stay. But it didn't work. Later, Thomas shows up and, as clueless, makes a comment of, why did his dad leave? And says the comment of, did he leave because of you, Victor? Victor didn't like this, so he started beating Thomas up to where he was bleeding and ran to the road, hoping he can catch up to his dad. During this bus ride, Victor tries to teach Thomas the roads on how to actually be a native, and tells him the tips, and saying he shouldn't have his hair braided, and saying how he should let his hair be free and be like a warrior, and to feel like he just came after killing a buffalo, and how he shouldn't let other people step on him or trick him. To see Thomas's flashback, during his entire story, you'll never see Arnold, Victor's dad, drunk, drinking, or anything. So he gets an entirely different view from what Victor sees. And as he's talking, he was talking about how he got the vision and was laying on the river of the bridge, and how Victor's dad came and yelled at him saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm trying to get a vision from the river." And he laughs and laughs and saying, "You know, your grandma will be worried about you." And at the point is, Thomas sees that as a good memory, even though Victor's dad was yelling. He knew it was for his safety. And after, they went to Denny's, and they talked on more on that day. So, what am I going on this? We reach back to present day, and Thomas decides to do it. He gets rid of the braids and let his hair let loose. As we're waiting, as the bus makes a stop, and we get to see the new Victor, being that warrior Victor told him to be. And as we see, it looks like a whole different person. When you look at Thomas, you see like a warrior staring down, making even the animals quake in fear. And yet you can still see the kind person he still is. I relate too much right now in Thomas's shoes more than Victor's. Because, for one, when looking at Victor's character, when I first watched this, I didn't enjoy him that much. But when you actually look into it, I started liking it more and more. The one thing I loved so much about this is the small comedy jokes and all that. But what I loved it most was how Evan Adams played Thomas. He was a storyteller and all. And how he was just a kind person and a kind soul. But sometimes in the world, that can always be true. And sometimes you have to be that warrior that to be like you just killed a buffalo. They eventually make it, where they meet Susie Songs, where they get to see that Arnold, Victor's dad, has already been cremated. While Victor would like to leave, Thomas is ready to just stay. He just wants to get something to eat after their entire trip. So eventually Victor decides, you know what, let's stay and let's eat something. So as they're eating their fry bread, Thomas keeps telling stories one by one, and he tells a great story on how Victor's mom makes the most magical fry bread. Sure, most of the food was bland, but once you get the fry bread, an entire meal turns into a feast. And how there were about 100 Indians and 50 pieces of fry bread. How are you going to feed 100 people with 50 pieces of fry bread? So Victor's mom went up to everyone and told everyone, there are 100 Indians and 50 pieces of fry bread, but I have a solution. As she raises the fry bread into the air and rips it in half. My thoughts on this, I just love the story that Thomas says. What inspired me to want to learn more stories about my culture. And I love it. It made me want to learn them more, want to memorize them, want to tell them, and be able to learn better ways on telling a story. Thomas soon wonders, how did she meet Arnold? Her car broke down and Arnold came to help her. And soon his truck broke down and they decided to walk. So as they were walking, Arnold asks, what's the worst thing she has done? She says how she stole some money. I asked Arnold what's the worst thing he's done, and Arnold said, what do you mean? That's barely nothing. So Susie Song said, I slept with my best friend's boyfriend. Arnold said how he once broke 3 hearts. Those 3 hearts being his wife, his son, and himself. And that's the thing about this, because Arnold drinks, but that doesn't mean he didn't love his family. Now, the story of Arnold, Victor's father, you might say, how could I love a man that abused his family and drinks? Well, drinks for a reason, and that reason is a sad one. That on that 4th of July party, Victor was drunk and happy, who was setting up a hand firework off into the sky, one by one. But unfortunately, he was too drunk to realize he set one off at Thomas's parents' house. So as it caught fire, he realized what just happened. Sure, he was able to say Thomas as well as Victor, but not Thomas's parents. And he started drinking the pain away because he can't handle the pain he has caused, and always blaming himself for that night. He kept telling himself over and over and kept thinking it was his fault. It was, but it was an accident. And yet he still blames himself. If you don't know, when it comes to Native culture, when you are in grieving for someone that has passed away, the long hair that you would have, you'd cut it short in the moment of grieving. And Arnold, his hair used to be so long and all. In fact, he made me jealous for that long of hair. But he kept it short after that fire because he was so much in mourning. He never let that hair grow because he was grieving that much. He would never let his hair grow. And honestly, that is sad to think of. And honestly, it's even sadder that because of him numbing this pain, he never truly realized what he was doing and how abusive he was being to his wife and his kid. And it ended up to where he was thrown out, never to see him again. And honestly, he was never meant to die in Arizona. Arizona was never supposed to be the area where he died. If he was able to change it and able to do one thing at least, he would have wanted to die with his family. He would have wanted to at least die with his family by his side. Now, when it comes to present day Victor, Susie tells him this. He doesn't believe her at first because he's like, wow, my father had you tricked too. And because he believes his father was a liar. He was a bad man that did a bad thing. And how, so when it came to it, Susie said, if I make a basket, you need to go inside the van. And so she makes it, and eventually Victor relents and goes in the van where his father has passed away. When someone dies in a spot, the smell is wrenching. So he looked around, and if you look at a Victor found, I believe, a wallet, and what was on the back of a photo of him and his family said the words home. Eventually, Victor would find a knife, and as I told you before, as a native culture, he decided to cut his hair. It really is just a way of mourning and grief. Victor, still thinking his dad was a liar, early in the morning he would take Thomas as well as his dad's truck, go in, and they left. And as they were going, Thomas kept telling thousands and thousands of stories, and eventually he came back to the Denny's. He was talking how his father kept talking about Victor, and eventually Victor gets angry and says, Thomas, and how he was sick of it, acting like he knew. So Victor, in a rage, tells Thomas, Did you know my father drank? Did you know my father left my family? Did you know he beat my mom up? And says how he is nothing but a liar. But Thomas still defends him after everything he hears, because Arnold was a great man, and says how Victor still moody for 10 straight years and has nothing to show. Doesn't have a job, doesn't have everything. So Victor says, same for you, man. What are you doing? And Thomas says how he cares for his grandmother. And Victor says how he looks out for his mom. And Thomas says, you make your mom cry. And sure, your father left her, but so did you. And you're worse, since you still live with her. Victor hates what his dad did. And yet, he still puts this burden on, and that they are wrong. He is stuck in a viewpoint where he's not willing to take anyone's viewpoint. Because he knows, he's like, how did you know my dad? Much more. He didn't believe anyone. He didn't want to see any other viewpoint other than he is a liar. So, where am I getting at this? Well, as they're arguing, all of a sudden, a crash happens. Thomas and Victor are okay, but a drunken husband, angry, pushes his wife back in the car, and Victor starts fighting with this man, arguing with him, and Thomas and another woman realize that a third party here needs help, since one of them did not do well in the crash. So Victor says, where's the nearest hospital? The nearest hospital is 20 miles away. So Victor tells Thomas he'll run. And all this drunken husband does is says that the injured person will die and they need to call for help. Yet, Victor still runs, and he runs as fast as he can, and as he's running, all these memories flood back and keep coming about where it comes to how his dad did go. Because one thing I forgot to tell in this, is that when it came to it, as well as Arnold helped save Thomas, and how he feels like he never did come back to help save him, since they were living in the same house, and how that was going. And yet, he starts thinking to himself that he did save also. And as he's going in, he gets so exhausted, and eventually he falls to the ground at the side of the road. And as he looks, he sees a man holding his hand out, and he sees his father. And as he gets pulled up and dragged and pulled it up, it turns out to be some construction workers, and where they help get that help everyone needs. So everyone's in the hospital, and for the most part, I do not understand, unfortunately. And really, I feel like this is a heart, and unfortunately my mind goes to so many thoughts that I really cannot critique this moment. As everyone's in the hospital and starting to get out, police officers coming, since the drunken guy reported that it was all Victor's fault, and how it was the crash, how he hit him and all that, he started and all. But luckily, thanks to the wife of that drunken man and the third party, they won't get any charges. So the police officer starts giving stuff, and the police officer asks Victor what's in the jar. And Victor proudly says, that's my father, sir. And when they make it home, Victor gives some part of Arnold's ashes to Thomas, so do what he wants as well. And as they reach the end, we also get to see Susie's song, Burning the Van, where Arnold used the place he died. And I feel like that's pretty symbiotic of how he burned Thomas's parents, and now he burns with them, and how they will burn for a good amount of time, and yet they're connected once again. As they're going on, we eventually get back to her. We get to Victor talking to his mom and how they go back and head inside the house once he gives the jar. Now she holds it and cares for that tiny little moment. This I can't tell you much, but this movie made me laugh. It put me to tears, made me angry. It put me in an entire emotion of like a like a spiral of emotions. And I think it's because I can relate a good amount to this. Not everything, but a good amount. There will be times that an action, if we're angry at someone, it doesn't mean we love. It doesn't mean that we don't love them. Here is something because this movie is great because it's on this definition on how even though we might accidentally harm someone, it doesn't hold our love as much as for them. Love can never falter, as well as a family can never be broken that easily. As well as, here's something personal, as my father told me. No matter if I'm gone, no matter how many times I yell at you, no more, if I seem mad, I'll always love you. That will never change. And remember, I'm always beside you. And it's something I keep to heart every single day. Anyway, that's my review on Smoke Signals. I hope you give this hope you really watch this. Anyway, have a nice day. Goodbye.